It won't take you long if you are relatively new to the church to know that I frequently talk about my neighbors, sometimes in positive ways. I talk about my neighbors a lot, and I could blame that on Jesus. But before that I knew neighboring was important to Jesus, I learned it from Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street. Are you familiar with the Mr. Rogers and the Sesame Street? Mr. Rogers invited me to understand my neighbors are interesting and different and worth getting to know. With kindness and gentleness and humility, genuine curiosity, Mr. Rogers asked questions. A counselor once taught me that questions can lead to understanding, and understanding can lead to acceptance, and acceptance is necessary for love. Probably got that from watching Mr. Rogers. Sesame Street similarly taught me that neighbors come in all shapes and sizes. Neighbors are people or animals. They're monsters. They're aliens. Some collect bottle caps and love pigeons. Some count everything. Some have imaginary friends. Some speak different languages than I do. Some like to sing and dance. Some are extra grouchy. But they all work and play and grieve and experience life together because whatever their differences, they have one powerful thing in common. They all live together as neighbors on the street. So we could spend some time talking about who our neighbors are. That's an important awareness. There's a book here that's been helpful for me, The Art of Neighboring. You're going to have some resources from this, and I don't know, Stephanie might offer a class that might work through some of this. We'll see how it goes. At the very least, you're going to get this on the front cover. There's this little neighborhood block map. You're going to get this, and through the course of this series, you'll be invited to get to know your neighbors. So I'm just warning you right at the beginning. This is not just talking about our neighbors, thinking about our neighbors. This is going to be us actually getting to know and meet and experience and interact with our neighbors. So if I don't see any of you for the next 3 or 4 weeks, I'll know what's happening. The Art of Neighboring. While we could spend some time wrestling with that, who are our neighbors, we will talk about that some. And whether or not we should love our neighbors, there's a theme running through this series. I honestly don't think I get much grief about that. Anybody here think we should not love our neighbors? Just raise your hand. We should ignore them. We should be mean to them. We should, beat them up if we can. No, we don't argue about that, honestly. I think most of us agree that loving our neighbors is a good idea. Don't get much argument there. So to clarify, when we're talking about our neighbors, we're talking about the people that we meet when we're walking down the street, the people that we meet each day, right? The folks you're going to come in common contact with frequently, your actual neighbors. And we're going to say something about what does it look like to love those neighbors. Again, we're not arguing about that. Once we figure out the who, it is that how that we tend to get caught up on, and that's always been the case. If you read in the Newer Testament, Luke's gospel in particular, Luke's story of Jesus' life, Luke chapter 10, a parallel piece to a scripture we're going to read here in a moment, that's the question, who's my neighbor? And Jesus tells the story that we call the story of the Good Samaritan. Maybe you've heard of that. Who's my neighbor? Luke 10. It's been a question we've wrestled with from the beginning. I wonder if the reason why we wrestle with it, and the reason why it was the question then, and the reason why it might be our question today, is that if we start to get to know our neighbors, if we give them a cookie, we're worried about how much deeper things could go. Wait, did he just say giving a neighbor a cookie is a problem? Hold on, let me explain. Have you read this book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? Have you read? 1985 is when this came out. I'm like, what? How did that happen? I, until recently, was only familiar with the book. I had not actually read the book. And if you give a moose or something, and if you take a mouse to school, there's a whole thing. Actually, if you get on Amazon Prime, there's like a whole series of, it's like they turned it into an animated series. Like the rabbit holes you fall into when you're thinking about Jesus-y stuff. Here's the thing, in this book, if you give a mouse a cookie, the cookie leads to the mouse wanting a glass of milk. And then when the mouse drinks the glass of milk, they're worried that they might have a milk mustache, so they want to look in the mirror. When they look in the mirror, they're going to think about all the other things that they need to think about, and maybe they're going to get tired from doing all the work that they're going to do, and then they're going to want to take a nap. And it goes on and on and on until the very end, the mouse is so tired that the mouse wants a little treat, and the mouse wants a cookie. So it just repeats, right? I wonder if part of our concern here is that if we engage our neighbors, we're worried that there might not be an end to that. That we might fall deeper and deeper into the hole of loving our neighbors. Maybe our concern is that we don't know that whether there'll be an ending spot. So we can give mental assent to the idea of loving our neighbor. I asked, anybody have a problem with that? Nobody had a problem that they admitted. But the truth of the matter is, we don't do it much. Yes? Can we be honest here? I mean, we're in church. If we can't be honest here, I don't know where you can be honest, right? We're going to be vulnerable here. We're going to own up to the fact that neighboring's hard. Being a good neighbor, loving your neighbor is difficult. And I think part of the problem, what I'm addressing right here at the beginning, is because we're worried about what it's going to cost us. So, instead of getting overwhelmed by the potentially enormous prospect of loving, and I do believe it is an enormous prospect, let's do this. Let's stop considering every scenario. The cookie leads to the milk, leads to the mirror. Let's stop that, and let's just stop worrying about what could go wrong and start imagining what could go right. I'm suggesting we start with hello. By that, I mean a literal hello. But more to the point, what I'm trying to say is let's just start simply. That's what Jesus does. I want to read our first scripture today. I've got a couple that I'm going to pick up. This one is from Matthew's telling of Jesus' life. Again, a parallel scripture to the one in Luke 10, but I'm going to read it to us today from Matthew 22. This is a piece that I referenced last week, but I'm just going to give it back to us again. Matthew 22, here's verses 36 and following. Teacher, meaning Jesus, which commandment in the law is the greatest? Jesus said to this Pharisee, said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Jesus is asked to identify the most important law. This is a Pharisee, right? This is the kind of the rule keepers, right? There's different groups of Jewish believers, and the Pharisees thought that it was their role to make sure that the laws were enforced, upheld, taught, understood. And they were very keen about making sure if anybody broke the law that they knew it. Jesus is asked to identify the most important law. It's really kind of meant to be a trick question. Because any law that Jesus mentions, then they're going to list 1,000 other laws. Well, there were 600 laws, but several other laws. Well, what about this one? What about this one? What about this one, right? How could you say that one? Jesus doesn't dodge the question. He doesn't fall into the trap. He simplifies the law. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. The second commandment is like it. The second most important, love your neighbor as yourself. Take all of the laws, and they're all meant to help us either love God better, more fully, right? Or love our neighbors. Take all the laws, and you can hang them on those two hooks. All the law and the prophets, all the teachings, all the wisdom, all that has been handed down from our ancestors really can be boiled down to two things. Don't you love this? Now, if you're a Pharisee and you've spent your whole life memorizing and enforcing 600 plus laws, and some dude comes by and says, 2. Right? That's a little frustrating. I'm thinking to myself, if I'm Sean Pharisee, are you kidding me right now? All I had to do is memorize 2 laws? But if you're Sean trying to figure out how to get through the day, if you're Sean just trying to figure out how to keep it all together, 2 feels a lot better to me than 600 plus, yes? Maybe for you too. So, friends, super easy. Love God, love other people. Right? Simple, but not easy. We struggle with this. We have difficulty with this. I actually kind of bank on you having difficulty with this because you'll come back every single week. Right? This is where we get to practice it. This is where we get to try to figure it out. This is where we get to wrestle with it. This is where we form a community that says we're going to try our best to figure that out and live that way. Well, this idea that Jesus has taken all the laws and boiled them down to these 2 are really to draw from the tradition. He didn't just make these up. Deuteronomy 6:5, that's the Shema, depending on whether you know how to pronounce it or not, which I don't, so you get both pronunciations as I understand it. That's Deuteronomy 6:5. That's the whole God is one, and we're going to love God with all that we are, all that we have. And then he picks up this Leviticus. I know many of you, when we were talking about our favorite scriptures, were quoting Leviticus left and right. I mean, just your favorite. Yeah, no, it's a bunch of laws, really. It's hard stuff. It's kind of dense. But Leviticus 19:18 says love your neighbor. That's what it's about. So what Jesus has done is he's taken all of these laws, he's gone back to the tradition, and he's picked up 2 of they really are the most important pieces. He's pulled them into this context, and he said, this is really what it's all about. Loving God and loving neighbors, the way he frames it, however, they're not 2 separate things. He says they are inseparable. The way that I understand that is if you're going to love God, the only way to do that is to also love your neighbor. Loving our neighbor is a way of loving God. Are you with me on this, friends? You can't say you love God and beat up your neighbor. There's actually a whole bunch of the Old Testament that talks about that, right? God's not pleased with a fast day that ends in us abusing our hired hands, right? God's not happy when we go clear the field and take everything and don't leave anything behind. God's not happy when we are blessed and we build bigger barns to hold the blessings instead of sharing them with others. It's all through our scriptures. Jesus makes it very clear, however, there's the most important commandment, and if you want to know something, the second is just like it. Love God and love other folks. You got to hold them together. They're inseparable. But it's also subtle what Jesus does, because Jesus doesn't ask us to fix our neighbors or convert our neighbors or rescue our neighbors. Can you hear this? There used to be a church that was very keen about protesting all kinds of stuff. You might have heard of them. I won't have to name them. Because I really believe this to be true. They understood loving the neighbor as pointing out how wrong their neighbors were. Right? Jesus says, love your neighbor. Don't try to fix them. You don't need to convert them. You don't need to rescue them. He asks us to love them. And love, at its simplest, oftentimes starts with just recognizing the other person, just understanding they are a person. It can start with a hello. Simple, but not always easy, not always comfortable. Some barriers I've experienced: cost, busyness, and awkwardness. I already mentioned the worrying about the cost. What if they want more from me than I'm willing to give? What if I actually have to show up and help out when I've got other things on my calendar, right? To be available for somebody might mean that I have got to sacrifice something I want to do or something that I have. We worry about the cost. We're pretty good about projecting all the things that might happen if we start loving our neighbor. We get concerned. I think busyness is also a barrier. We might wave at our neighbors from our driveway as we're getting the mail or as we're pulling into the garage, but we're always coming and going. We're always so busy. It's difficult for us to have any kind of meaningful conversation or any kind of depth of relationship because most of our interaction with the people that live closest to us is a casual wave and we're back in our cocoon, right? Or even if we're at our house, most of the time we're not, we're out somewhere else. Busyness is hard for us. It's a barrier to relationship. Awkwardness is another. I'm not talking about the kind of awkwardness of just being me. I'm pretty awkward most times. But maybe it's the awkwardness of saying, I've lived next to this person for years, I don't know their name, and now if I go over and try to introduce myself, it's going to feel really weird because I've lived next to them for years. I should know their name. So, hey, sorry I don't know you, even though I've been your neighbor forever. Feels odd or strange or awkward. It's really the curse of a pastor. That's why many of us advocate for name tags. I've been here for a year, and I should know every one of your names. And mostly I think I do. Until I'm tired or hungry or worn out or somebody says something to me that gets me thinking about something else, and the next thing I know, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Which Jones boy is that? Okay, Walt went off to college. It's not Walt. I'm process of elimination, right? I'm like, okay, Mac is the little guy. He's Owen. It's Owen. Right? I just try to get it right. And so I used to joke, we've got some friends here from a previous church that I've served. I used to say, if I ever say to you, good morning, brother. How you doing, sister? That means I cannot immediately come up with your name, right? I still want to greet you. I still want to be connected to you, but maybe I'm struggling. You know what would be okay? If I just said, I am so sorry. I don't know why your name just went out of my head. But there's something about our relationship, especially as a pastor to folks who I pastor, that feels weird. I'm supposed to know your name, right? So if you've got neighbors and you're not sure what their names are, that one of the barriers has been, for me anyway, has been when a certain amount of time passes, now it feels strange to say, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. These feelings are real. But I think they also can become kind of a spiritual resistance. You heard Stephanie praying that we might just have an openness to the Spirit, that we might respond to the Spirit as we feel these nudges. But we can also build up a resistance to the Spirit. We start using these as excuses, and we start isolating ourselves and insulating ourselves, that there's a kind of an inertia that builds up over time that keeps us disconnected. We can overcome being stuck by remembering why we love in the first place. Maybe it's okay to be awkward. Maybe it's okay to be less busy. Maybe it's okay not to worry about all the things that could go wrong, as I've already said, but start imagining what could go right. We could overcome being stuck by remembering why we love in the first place. Why do we love in the first place? Scripture number 2. This is 1 John, one of the letters near the very end of our New Testament. Little bitty things. This is the first one. There's 3 that go in kind of a sequence, but this is the first one. This is 1 John 4. I'm just going to pick it up at the 7th verse here. Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. God's love was revealed among us in this way. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. And this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the atoning sacrifice for our sins. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we also ought to love one another. One more verse. No one has ever seen God. But if we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. Maybe if we focus on God, if we keep our attention on loving God, then maybe we'll have enough courage to be awkward. Maybe if we remember that we have been loved, we'll share that love with others. That's part of what I think John is trying to say here, that the idea of love is meant to be a response. If we don't love our neighbor, could we go so far as to say we don't love God? I think that's what John's pointing out here. So the foundation of our love is God. We're going to focus on that first. Why do we talk about apprenticeship being so important? Why do we talk about this faith community being so important? Why do we talk about prayer and Bible study and reading scripture? Why do we talk about these things being so important? Because these are the ways in which we interact, we learn about, we experience God, so that we could live out that experience with others. The foundation being God's love. So let us love one another because God is love. God loved us. We, in the Methodist tradition, call that prevenient grace, the grace that came before. We didn't do anything to earn it. We can't earn it. We don't deserve it. But God loved us first, loved us anyway, and we get to respond to that love. We don't have to respond. Did you hear me? We get to respond. Love, then, as we think about it that way, is not a reward for living a certain way. It's not a reward for doing some good deed. It's not something we, again, earn, but it's something we get to enjoy and share. God makes the first move and then invites us to make the next. So when we say hello with intention, we're embodying a spiritual truth. God came close to us, so we get to come close to God. God initiated a relationship with us, so we get to initiate relationships with others. God saw us and said hello, not with judgment, but with love. Again, if you read this story, it's a great love story of God continuing to pursue God's people, all of us, even when we're disobedient, even when we turn away, even when we do everything we can to be enemies of God, God continues to love us. That's the good news. Yes? I don't think you guys believe it. So that's okay. That's all right. What we get to do is we get to practice it. And I think as we practice it, maybe it becomes more real for us. Maybe it becomes more true for us. So I've got this resource, Start With Hello. If you are not familiar with Shannon Martin, I invite you to take a look at her stuff. What I like about Shannon is she's a broken, flawed person, but she's also very, very interested in practical faith, living out your faith in real and tangible ways among your neighbors. This book, Start with Hello, talks about that, works through that. If you would like to join with me and work through a resource like this, I would love to engage with you around these ideas. It's super simple, right? Start with hello. And then maybe host a taco party, right? It's fun, and I kind of like that, having some fun with this. If Let me just as an aside say that. If following Jesus is boring to you, if it feels cumbersome to you, if it's just, feels like drudgery to you, you're doing it wrong. Jesus is awesome, amazing, fun. Okay. So here's one thing that Shannon says. We're on a first name basis. She likes me to call her Shay Shay. It's weird. I'm totally going to do that now. I'm going to call her up and I'm going to say, hey, I was just preaching about start with hello. Can I call you Shay Shay? Okay, here's what she says. There's no expiration date or deadline for forging authentic, enduring relationships. We're free to take it slowly. We live our lives trusting that the tiny moments will not be wasted. Friends, here is something that I've come to understand in the last year or so. I used to believe, and I don't know why, I don't know where I picked this up, I don't know why I've held on to this as long as I have. But that this life of faith is supposed to be, you start it and you race through it. That there's supposed to be an obvious improvement in how joyful you are and how kind you are and how happy you, right? This should be like instantaneous. That is not true. That could happen for some folks. That has not been my experience, and it's not been the experience of most of the folks that I know. What Shannon is saying here is an important truth. Authentic relationships, loving your neighbor, can take a long time. It might take our entire life. And that's okay. The small moments, these little victories, hello, neighbor, aren't wasted. They add up. And over time, we get to grow closer to one another. Over time, we become more and more loving, and people experience more and more love. That's not heroic. It's not perfect. It's not a quick fix. It's just being faithful, showing up time and time again. I've heard it said that apprenticeship, discipleship, is slow and boring. And I disagree with the boring part, but I think the slow part's right. It just takes a while. So instead of worrying about how far this will go, maybe we should just say, where could we begin? A wave across the street, a name remembered, right? We're going to just practice these things. A plate of cookies, yes, an actual plate of cookies. We're going to be working on this. I've got a stack of 140-something plates in my office right now that we're going to decorate, and we're going to encourage you to put some cookies on and take to your neighbors. You've been forewarned. Maybe it's just a moment of eye contact instead of eyes on your phone. I'm becoming that get off my lawn guy. I go to a restaurant and I just watch all the people sitting down to eat, and everyone sitting at the tables has their device out. And I think to myself, what is going on here? Is there something on your phone that is more important than the person right in front of you? Right? I was at a game a couple weeks ago, a football game, a live football game. We are watching the game happening right in front of us. A crowd of people. The person sitting next to me is shopping on their phone. What? What do you need to buy at this moment that is more important than what's happening right here? Are you with me on this, friend? I don't want to be the get off my lawn guy, but maybe where we start is we just start looking at each other again. Yeah? You're beautiful people, but I never could see that if I was looking at my phone. Unless I guess I was looking at pictures of you on my phone, which would be really weird, especially if we're sitting right next to each other. Right? We don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to write the whole story. Let's just turn the page. Let's just take a step. I am becoming more and more convinced that many of us don't start because we're worried about not finishing. We're worried about not being able to get to the end. Just start. Just start. I have no idea how long I'm going to be the pastor of this church. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be alive on this planet. right? I have no clue. I have no way of knowing. That could paralyze me. That could stop me from doing all kinds of things. But instead, what if we just took a step? What if I'm here 1,000 years? Right? Elon Musk creates something that can transfer my consciousness from this body to some other body and bigger, taller, stronger, faster. That's my $1 million man. Lee Majors, anybody? I'm so old. We don't have to have it all figured out. Let's just start. Take a step. Say hello. Because maybe the real risk isn't that things will get too complicated. Maybe the real risk is that we'll miss out on the beauty of connection. Maybe what we're really risking is a chance to learn from someone new or the joy of participating in something bigger than ourselves. What if hello, right? What if just that hello that we're going to practice this week, what if that hello leads to shared grief or a shared joy? What if it leads to meals together? I've told you the story of having some friends over to our house, cook up a couple lasagnas. We've got way more than enough. Catherine sees our neighbors out on their back deck enjoying a glass of wine, and she says to them from the back, "You know what goes good with a glass of wine? Would you like a plate of lasagna?" They're crazy enough to say yes. And so she plated up, this is during a party at our house with our friends, hanging out, eating lasagna. She plates up a couple things of lasagna, takes it over to them, and they eat and enjoy. What if a hello, see, that would never have happened had we not had some interaction with them, had she not stepped out onto the back deck to say, hey, right? Good job, Catherine. Do what? And you got a glass of wine out of it. It's true, and chocolates. They invited us over later, had a little bonfire. Yeah. I think some cashews as well. What if that hello leads to kids playing together? I know some of you have been like the mom and dad on the block, right? Your house is the party house. It's where all the kids gather. That happens a lot of times because somebody said hello, right? You made a connection, and then you become the place where you're welcomed and loved and accepted, and so people come and they want that, right? We need that. What if just a hello led to that? What if a hello led to sharing prayer over fences? When some of our neighbors have had surgeries or they've got something going on in their life, that gets shared among neighbors. Normally, people don't walk up to your house and say, hey, I'm going to have a surgery tomorrow. Would you pray with me or for me? You know how that happens? It happens by you said hello, and you shared some lasagna, and then you got some wine, and the next thing you know, you're talking about doing life together in real and powerful ways. What if your neighborhood, your apartment complex, your block, your spiritual ecosystem was just waiting to bloom? What if it was just about watering the seeds or planting seeds in those places? So this is what I want us to do this week. Are y'all still awake? I wish I could make this shorter. I probably could, but I feel like I'd leave out too much. And so I keep talking and keep sharing because there is so much. There's going to be another Sunday. I just have to tell myself I don't have to tell it to you all today. But let me recap. Just today, you're not being asked to create a 5-point neighborhood evangelism strategy, right? I'm not asking you to write a manifesto on how to convert your neighbors. It's not what this is. What you are being asked to do is live like love is real. Live like we believe Jesus when he says these are the most important things for us to focus on. Loving God and loving our neighbors, the most important things we could do today or any day, right? That's what you're being asked to do. You're being asked to trust that Jesus meant it and that we could follow it. You're being asked and invited to start with a hello. A possible frame for us, I'm gonna come back to this. This is something that I've worked on for a little bit, and I feel that the missing part was prayer. In seminary, we had this kind of an idea of action and reflection. So you'd be exposed to some ideas, or we'd be asked to do something in our communities, and then we'd reflect on what our experience had been. Vice versa, right? You could start at either place, action or reflection. But it was meant to be kind of this cycle. I think the prayer part was missing, and so I'm suggesting to us a new frame here, par. It could have been pra, but I think par sounds better. Now, we've got some golfers in the house, right? Par that's like supposed to be, like when they design a golf course, par is like what they think you're supposed to be able to get through the course in, right? The number of strokes you're supposed to take to get through the course, par. I don't think I'd say average, but maybe average is a good way to talk about that too. You want to go under par, which means you're better than the expectation for the course, right? Here, friends, par is good. Just shoot for par, right? Don't need to be a hero. We already said that. We're just going to be consistent over time. Show up. Do this work. So, par, pray. First, we're going to start, as Stephanie kind of began us today, just ask God to help us see our neighbors with fresh eyes. You might have lived in your neighborhood for decades. You might think you know your neighbors, and there's nothing new to discover about them. Or you might be new to a neighborhood or a apartment complex or wherever you live. And so what I'm asking you to do is say, God, would you help me see my neighbors? Help me see what's going on. Help me understand who they are. Help me see them. That's where we're going to start. Got it? You're all taking notes, right? You're all writing this stuff down? There'll be a quiz later. Pearly Gates, Peter's going to say, how'd you do on the par? Okay, maybe not. A, act. Say hello to one neighbor this week. Can you do that? Yes. Not a question mark. No, an exclamation point. Yes. Yeah, just say hello to a neighbor. You could cheat. It could be a neighbor you already know. And then reflect. Jot down. We don't do a lot of writing anymore. Maybe you type this. Maybe you do a voice memo in your phone. However it works for you. The idea, the technology behind it is not important. What we want to do is we want you to reflect on the experience. Find some way to capture whatever that experience was. Reflect on it. How did that go? How did that make you feel? Was it awkward? Was it weird? Was it encouraging? Did they invite you over for some wine? Right? You just share that. Write that down. If nothing at all happens, that's okay too. Just pay attention to what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. And we're going to just keep doing this because as we get to the reflection part, the reflection then should lead us to having some time with God saying, hey, God, thanks for that experience. That was awesome. Or, hey, God, could you help me be less awkward next time? Or, hey, God, whatever, right? So it's meant to just keep going. So it kind of looks like do I have it up here? Yeah, it's up there in the little corner. It kind of looks like a circle, but we might think of it more of like a spiral, right? It just keeps going over time, yeah? Most brilliant thing you've ever seen? Lives are changed? Yeah. Tell all your friends and neighbors. Yeah. Here's what I want us to do. I want us to start right now. Let's just pray. God, would you help us to see our neighbors? I might go so far, God, as to say, would you help us see one another more clearly? Would you give us your eyes? Would you help us to understand, to experience one another, even in this space, even in this place? But especially, God, I'm asking for that a seeding of your Spirit that would take us from this place out into the world, that we would begin this work of neighboring well.